And welcome back into the Recruiting Roundup, powered by Rockin' Refuel. That's Scout.com's Jason Jewell. I'm Jared Cohen. We bring the latest in Arizona high school football recruiting, and we do so year-round. And speaking of year-round recruiting, Nick Carmen over the spring and in the summer had all sorts of offers, and now it's continued again this fall.
Yeah, the big Mountain Point offensive tackle got his 15th offer from the University of Utah. And I watched his early season highlight films, and he is just dominating people. He's now 265 pounds. He's 6'4", and he just looks the part. Now, the Pac-12, he told me, is where he wants to be. So if some other schools are showing some interest, Cal, Arizona State, Oregon, schools like that are showing interest in him, if they don't end up offering, I think Utah might be the school for him.
Now, when you look at a guy that evolves from one year to the next like this, what are the biggest things that stand out on paper, other than the size that he added, that makes him such an attractive prospect?
Well, Mountain Point does a very good job with their offensive linemen, so he's going to be well coached. He's going to have good technique, but really it's his frame, because he was 6'4", but he played last season at 225 pounds. Now that he's up to 265 pounds, he puts himself in that BCS type category as far as being a prospect at the Division I level.
So there's Nick Carmen. Let's get into last week's games now. Player of the week. So far, we've had Paul Lucas for his great play in the Sullenberger Classic. We've had Danny Reyes for his great two-way performance at Goldwater. This week, Jason, a quarterback.
I was out of the Boulder Creek versus Westview game, and their Boulder Creek's junior quarterback, Gunther Johnson, was lights out. He has Boulder Creek rolling. They are now 2-0, but against Westview, he threw for 244 yards and had 4 touchdowns in the air, but he was a dual threat guy, had 132 yards and another score on the ground.
Boulder Creek just off to a great start to this season. Congrats, Gunther Johnson, on our Player of the Week. Now's the time of the broadcast that we talk about our breakout prospects, to teams and players on each team that we noticed in the games we check out over the weekend, of players that we didn't know much about going in, but we learned a lot about as a result. I'm going to start. I was out at Chandler and Buena last weekend, and looking at the interior line on the defensive side, you have J.W. Windsor, and then my breakout prospect, Thomas Chisholm. Now, this is a guy, 6'2", 280 pounds, and he is a load to deal with at the nose tackle position. Talking to Coach Aguano during the week last week, he mentioned to me replacing Cruz Flores and Jordan Hoyt, 2 guys that are now playing Division I football, was not going to be easy, but Chisholm and also J.W. Windsor, the way they've come in and stepped up from the beginning, has made that transition easier than they thought. And Chisholm, as I mentioned, is a guy who was on very few's radars going into the year and has been a pleasant surprise even to the Chandler coaching staff.
Now, I mentioned I was at the Boulder Creek versus Westview game. I knew about Gunther Johnson, knew about Nathan Eldridge, Ryan Parento. I knew about all those guys, but the guy that stood out to me was junior wide receiver Troy Reed. He's 6'1", 190 pounds, and really looks apart. He's thick. He had 3 receiving touchdowns in that game. Early in the game, it was the Johnson to Reed combination that really put Boulder Creek ahead, got them rolling, and ended up getting them the victory against Westview, 34-33, in a very exciting game.
And now let's look ahead to week 3. Gosh, it's already about a month worth of football games to get through, and we have week 3 coming up this week. I'll start with the game I'm keeping an eye on, going down to southern Arizona. Cienega going up against Catalina Foothills. Great potential prospects facing off in this game. We've talked a lot about Terrence Johnson out at Cienega, a two-way player, wide receiver, also plays some DB. He's also a standout basketball player, one of the best for this 2015 class. It's going to be interesting to see where he wants his future to be on playing basketball or playing football. He'll be out on the field for the Bobcats. And then Rich Rodriguez's son, the quarterback for Catalina Foothills, running that Rich Rodriguez offense that they've implemented over there. And he has put on a lot of weight and size in the offseason, has good speed, and he's starting to really showcase his arm quite a bit. Had a big touchdown in a win over Saurita last week. Those are the 2 I'm watching for in that matchup down in Southern AZ.
Probably the marquee matchup in Arizona this weekend is going to be Hamilton versus Pinnacle. We all know about Hamilton, and we talk about their defensive line, Caleb Pert, Garrett Rand. We've talked about those guys in the past, but I think it's their offensive play is really what stepped up and has them 2-0 right now. Quarterback James Sosinski is playing very, very well and has emerged as the starter for the Huskies, and junior running back, wide receiver, slot receiver, Kyler Burke has been their breakout performer and really done a great job this season. Then you look over at Pinnacle. They have Brian Lewerke, who everyone knows about. threw 4 touchdowns last week against Millennium, and their transfer wide receiver, Adam Turner, transfer from Thunderbird, is a lights-out player, so I think that's a very good game to watch this weekend.
And then finally, one other game to talk about, Jason, before we go. Chandler going up to Colorado to place Valor Christian. Valor is a team that's in your territory because you cover Colorado as well. What does Chandler have in store for them? What are some of the matchups to keep an eye on for this one?
Now, Valor Christian's been the marquee program in the state of Colorado. They have Division I players just hand over fist, just like Chandler, just like Mountain Point does. So it's going to be a very big game. Their marquee player, though, is Eric Lee, a cornerback that's committed to the University of Nebraska. Be fun to watch him against the Chandler wide receivers, Justin Jan, Terrell Flanagan, Danny Mahan. That'll be a very good matchup in that game.
So that's it for this week's edition of the Recruiting Roundup, powered by Rockin' Refuel. That's Jason Jewell. I'm Jared Cohen on Sports360AZ.com.